All right, my friends, welcome back to the Reisinger build. That's right, this is the project that we have been chronicling start to finish with all the best building science and all the best building practices. Now in this episode, as you can see, I got a fully framed house, but I got no windows and doors. It's time to do something about that. On this episode, we're gonna show you how to install these two different Pella products with best practice methods. Today's build show is sponsored by Pella. Let's get going.
A Build Original Series in partnership with Builders FirstSource, the Reisinger Build. This episode is sponsored by Pella.
Okay guys, welcome back. Today is window and door install, and I've got two different Pella series products to show you for install here. First off, this window, you've seen this probably before. This window has been in production for a long time, a gorgeous Pella window. This is their Reserve collection. That's a bit of a new name, but it's that same beautiful wood window with an exterior aluminum cladding for long-term durability. Now you're going to notice that this window doesn't have a nailing flange, however. And in fact, we're using a brand new innovation on this window called Steady Set, which you're going to see in a little bit later as we install this. It's going to totally change the game in terms of safety and install time. But this Impervia window is what you're used to seeing from all kinds of different window manufacturers. It has a flange on the outside that does both waterproofing and structural connection to the building. We've got at least a dozen manufacturers that are used to doing this. This is nothing normal, but I want to show you best practices on both. We're actually going to start installing this flange window first, and this happens to be an Impervia product. If you're not familiar with that line, that's an all-fiberglass window, and we've used it in two specific places in the house, basically bathroom spaces where we've got either water or high humidity, where we're worried about maybe a wood frame on the inside having problems with interior moisture. But this window is fiberglass inside and out, and just like a boat that's made out of fiberglass, this window is not going to have any problems with water, either interior water or outside water. So let's take a look at this install on the Impervia first. All right, Chewy. Thank you, sir. Okay, so as the carpenters are working on this install, let me kind of narrate what we did to get to this point. Also, you're going to notice this is an outside install, right? And on a traditional flanged window, you're installing this from the outside. You got to be really cautious on your safety, especially thinking about a second floor. This one's a little bit easier. I got a pitched roof here, but think about that third floor window, second story window with 12-foot ceilings. You can get pretty high on your ladder work. Stay tuned to the end of the video. We're going to show you a new innovation called Steady Set that will allow us to install from the inside. But let's talk about the prep to get ready for this install. Zip bar on the outside of this building, and if you saw that episode, that's foam, 1 inch of foam sandwiched between the zip system sheathing and the 2x4 structural framing. We wanted to cover over that foam, and we also wanted to bring our air seal to the inside of the window. Plus we want the entire rough opening to be watertight. If this window fails in 50 years, I want to make sure that any moisture, any water that gets past that window for whatever reason is going to hit a waterproofed opening and be able to run out harmlessly. If it runs out and no one knows, doesn't matter, the window never leaked. But if that isn't waterproof to the inside, that can be a problem in the future. So we're going to take our best practice method, which for us is going to mean first running with this zip system. They make this beautiful stretch tape that makes a perfect sill pan on the bottom of the window. You're going to notice that also the sills on this job are already pitched straight from the factory. When we framed this, this had a 5-degree bevel on the bottom of the sill. So we ran that stretch tape there, but then you're going to notice on the sides, the two jambs, the verticals, we ran some zip tape to the inside. The reason being is we want that continuity of the air barrier to the inside of the window. You're going to see later how we're going to air seal on the inside of the window. So we wanted that air barrier brought to the inside. Same thing on the head. We taped that from the head to the inside. So now I've got that full continuity on the air barrier. And now my rough opening is totally water sealed. Now on the sill, before the guys put that window in, you're going to also notice we took about a 1/4 inch rip of basically 1x6 type material to make a back dam as well. We've got a pitched sill, but if water were to get past that window for whatever reason, we want a place that's going to dam it up, that's going to stop it from coming inside and encourage with gravity that water to flow to the outside. So we've got that back dam in place. And then in terms of the flanged window install, you're gonna notice first off that we're using screws on this install. You could use you know, a big nail, like a roofing nail with a big head. Screws are nice too, but we specifically opted for a Spax screw that has a wafer head. But you're gonna notice that we're making sure that when we test that nail through the nailing flange, that head is bigger than the nailing flange. You kind of want to stay away from a pneumatic nail gun. It could split that flange. It's not best practice. So we're going to stay away from a traditional pneumatic type gun install. The other thing you're going to notice is inside, one of the carpenters has set up a laser. That way we can double check this. A fixed window like this, a pretty straightforward window install. It's a little bit easier than, let's say, a big double hung. We're worried about the action and double checking that everything's working and is smooth and is working correctly. It's not a whole lot to go wrong with a small fixed window like this. But the process is the same. We're gonna basically fasten it around the edges, and you're gonna notice typically they're gonna put a fastener on one of the bottom right or bottom left corners first so that that window can tilt a little bit. And then they'll double check, are we perfectly plumb with the laser? If they are, then they'll start screwing off the window around the edges. Now, when it comes to the bottom of the window, we're not gonna do anything on the bottom of the window in terms of sealing it. We wanna make sure that if any water gets in, it actually harmlessly gets out. A lot of times over the years, I've put some horseshoe shims in there, or I've put a little bit of a shim just to have a little bit of a spot for drainage on that bottom flange. It's up to you what you wanna do on that. And then also, based on the Pella recommendations, you can either use caulking or not when it comes to 3 sides around that flange. We've decided not to do that on this project. We went back and forth and deliberating on that, but we decided ultimately for the best remodelability, you know, when I want to take this window out in 50 years, I thought it was best just to go ahead and rely on the zip tape for the water sealing and not put that upside down horseshoe shaped type of sealant on the inside. If you're going to do that, double check with all the manufacturers, especially in this case, Huber Zip System, to look for compatibility. And you don't want too much of that oozing out outside of that flange too, because you want that tape to tape connection to be really tight and secure. With that being said, these guys are probably almost done on this install. And the last step is going to be to go ahead and use Zip System tape on the jambs, and then finally on the head. And then we've got a really nice install on the outside. Now there's a little bit more work on the inside of this to complete that. We'll come to that in a minute. But now that this window is in place, let's actually slide gears and we're gonna show you the steady set install from the inside. So let's actually go upstairs and let's show you the next window that we're gonna install. Okay, y'all, next up, the Reserve collection. So you saw me install the Impervia. You guys did a great job on that. That's a really nice, frankly, very easy install because it's a single fixed window. It was nice and small. This window a little bit more typical for the house though. I only had a couple of those Impervias in the house. The rest of the windows are this Reserve collection. This is a wood window, as I said earlier. It's black on black, which, you know, if you know me, you know I'm a fan of black. So I'm sure excited about black exterior, black interior. This also, you're gonna notice, has jamb extensions on it. By the way, shout out to Pella. Look at that nice packaging. Fully plastic on the outside, cardboard, so nothing's getting messed up. And you can see how the window looks a little milky. There's a film on there already. So when your masons come, we're not worried about mortar getting on the glass. So they take protection seriously. I really appreciate that. And as we rip this cardboard off, be careful though, right? There's staples in there. We don't want our hands getting cut. And I really like how this bottom cardboard too is even thicker on the back side. And this cardboard here is holding down an innovation we're about to talk about. And let me actually turn this around so you can see it. Remember how I mentioned in the beginning that this is a non-flanged window? Well, I've got Jaden from the tech department actually joining me there. He is. Hey, Jaden.
Thanks for having me out.
Good to see you, brother. So, Jaden, this is a non-flange window. I just mentioned that. How are we going to install this without that typical nailing flange?
Nailing flange, but it has a flashing flange.
Okay, so maybe it technically wasn't correct on my wording.
Fine.
Flashing flange, but not an install flange, right?
Correct.
So instead, how are we going to install this window?
So we have what we were calling our steady set brackets. So we have a few different options for brackets. We have 3 different ones, one specific to 2x4 and 2x6 construction with the more standard or traditional 7/16 to 1/2 inch sheathing.
Yep.
And we also have a Reisinger special. So if you're doing R sheathing or various wall depths.
The wonky wall thickness like I've got here.
Absolutely. You can adjust up to an 1/8 inch all the way in from inside to outside. So
that's really cool.
It offers from 3.5 inch up to 8 3/4 inch of wall depth.
So in other words, when I ordered this job, I told Matt, my BFS sales guy, this is my wall thickness. Had this been just a standard 2x4 or 2x6 wall, we would have shipped with one of these normal guys.
Absolutely.
Slam them in, no big deal. These are gonna fit right in here, and those are gonna accommodate my wall thickness.
Yep.
But since I tend to do things out of the ordinary, I've got the Pella Special, which they've already thought of other nerds like Matt Reisinger ahead of time. And this one basically has an infinity amount of it, not infinity, but up to a 2x8 plus size.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then talk to me about how we decide where we're gonna install this bracket, because you're gonna notice that the window comes pre-installed with 3 on each side of these bracket receivers, if I'm saying that word correctly.
Yeah, most common size windows will have about 6 brackets on them. And to select the correct notch, there's a couple different ways you can do it. This window, since it has jamb extensions, you can simply place it on, up against the window frame and then measure, and then select your appropriate notch. And there's coin lines that you can break the bracket to make it shorter if you need to go down to 2x4, for example. Or there's another method of doing it on the opening itself where you can select the right bracket depth.
So with these jamb extensions, my BFS rep said, hey Matt, how thick is your drywall? Is it 1/2 inch or 5/8?
Yep.
So I said it's 5/8. So the front of this jamb extension should be right at flush with my 5/8 rock. So if we take that over just a hair, there's 5/8.
And there would be the notch that you'd use.
Got
So you
it.
can mark that, and then if the rest of the project is the same as that, you can continue and mark the rest of the brackets and slide them all and engage them into the receiver there.
Okay, so let me, just for comparison's sake, let's measure my full jam depth of my zip bar. It's just a hair under 5 inches. It's 4 7/8. And so if I was going to use that measurement, how would I take that onto the bracket?
Yes, so the method of using the opening, I will need another bracket. There's some up there,
Yep,
actually.
right here. There you go.
So let me get this window against the wall.
Okay.
All right, so this bracket actually has a notch on it on one side, and it's designated as the slot key. You can place the bracket onto the opening. One bracket with a tab where the exterior flashing fin is going to integrate with.
Okay.
And then the other bracket, reverse, and where it's going to be attached on the inside of the wall. And there, that little triangle notch, that is the notch you'd want to select.
Okay, so we're just going to put a Sharpie mark on there.
Absolutely.
And that's how we know this is where it's going to go.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And then we could also pre-snap those off if they're too long.
Yes.
Is that true?
So once you select your notch, you can simply bend and break at the coin line, remove the excess bracket so it's not interfering with your flashing fin when you fold it out later on.
Okay, Jaden, let's show how those brackets go in. So I'm going to slide the window out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to move over here. And
So
now
as
you
the
can actually show
installer,
that.
I would start sliding the bracket in, and then I'd use a flathead or a flat bar to hold the receiver catch arm up.
And if you look closely,
slightly.
there's 2 teeth on either side that
And
are
then
going to
I'd-
fall into that line
Right.
that he Sharpied.
Oh, I was too far, right there.
And now, for a double check, we should be able to pull our tape out. Our drywall thickness here is 5/8, and we're marked at 5/8. So there we go. We know we're correct. Okay, so Jaden, let's throw all 6 of those on, then we'll grab the
yep.
carpenters to do this install. That's cool. I like how you marked that with a Sharpie. I think that makes a lot of sense. Gives you a good visual reference that you've got it correct.
Yeah, so you can see why with the other bracket options, with the one notch, it's a lot easier just to slide it in because it's going to automatically catch on the notch that you need.
Yep.
So one note there is just these adjustable brackets, they take a little bit of extra time to get them set in the correct spot, but it's well worth it. You'll
Yep.
see in a moment.
Now, while Jaden puts those last 3 on, one thing I want to mention, these have jamb extensions. And you can actually, if you look really closely, you can tell where the window stops and the jamb extension starts. I'm actually going to do one extra nerdy detail that's a bit optional, but I want to air seal in between those 2 pieces of wood. I want to make sure that I don't get any airflow in there. And you're going to notice on the last step of the install, we're going to come back in and put some low expansion foam in here. And then I'm going to do a caulking detail that's going to act as a backstop for both air and water. So I'm actually going to either take a piece of tape and tape over this. We could use something like a European tape, like a Sega tape, or we could just simply take what we've got on the job site, which in our case, we use a lot of this. This is the zip system liquid flash, and we're gonna just drop a bead right in that joint between the two, and then we're ready to set this window. Okay, so Jaden, we ran a bead of liquid flash in that jamb extension joint between the window and the jamb extension. When I was doing that though, I see this little musical instrument, a little comb or some fingers in the top. What does this do in the top of the window?
Yeah, so we call that our head stabilizer. So you'll see in a second, but once the installer places it in the opening, it's going to help keep that window from falling back in on him while he's focusing on leveling and squaring of the window and also anchoring the bracket. So it's really an assist feature to help the installer as he's setting it in the opening. Gotcha.
And the one thing I want you to note is when you see my guys install this window, notice it's just one guy. Now we do use a suction cup to make it a little easier on the inside. One guy, no ladder. And no one guy in, one guy out as well. And these little combs or fingers, whatever I like to call them, that's probably not the correct name, they're gonna hold that window in place. So literally once he drops it in the hole, that's gonna hold it in place as he starts screwing it off. So let's grab Chewy, let's get this window installed. All right, Jaden, how'd we do?
Great.
Looks pretty good?
Yeah.
So talk me through what Chewy did on this install.
Yes, so the installer will set it into the opening as you saw, and then the first step we recommend is centering the unit, and then attaching your bottom brackets first.
Gotcha.
After you level the sill.
And so you notice he used that Bosch laser to make sure that he put that laser mark right on the bottom of your extension jamb, made sure everything was nice and flat right there, and then he screwed those off, right?
Yes, and we have provided pre-attached sill shims under each corner of the window where they want, so you could shim directly under the window if necessary to level that sill first.
Yep.
And then after you attach your bottom brackets first, then you can work on leveling and straightening your jambs. Air shims work great for that. Yep. Just slide it in between the frame and the rough opening. Then you can fasten the rest of your brackets.
So he used his laser then from the sill to the jamb and switched it to a plumb line. And then he used those nice air shims, which worked great, just to verify that everything was looking good. Also, this window, by the way, is a particularly easy one because it's a fixed window, just like our other window. We didn't show a harder window, which might be a double hung, let's say. But when you've got a double hung, when you've got other actions, you want to make sure that you're double checking the action too, right? Work the window, open the window, close the window a couple times, make sure that everything's good, whether it's a casement or a double hung or whatever.
Absolutely.
Anything I missed on that?
Yeah, one other component we attached onto the frame from the factory is a shim receiver. So double hungs, for example, where you want to shim at the end of your check rails, we provided a little guide to receive a wedge shim at that location to help assist with making the even sash to frame reveal.
Got it. And then I want to point out, Jaden, that this is a one-man install at this point. From the inside, one man. Chewy used the Woods Power Grip. That was that handle that he used, that temporary handle. And that thing allows him to just sit it in place, tip that in. Those fingers catch on the top. So even on a windy day like today, which thank God it's incredibly hot, it's nice to have a little wind, but that window didn't blow back on him, allowed him to put some screws in and kind of acted like that second hand. So in comparison to the other window, that Impervia window we set earlier, we got a man in, we got a man out. This is all from the inside. So then when he's done with this inside install, then he goes outside, pulls those, what do you call those things that flap the ears back?
fin covers. They just hold the fin retained in the 90-degree reverse fold orientation.
So fin covers. It kind of looks like a dog's ear flapped back. Pull those out.
Yep.
The flaps pop out. And that's now just a flashing flange, right? It's not an install flange. It's not a screw flange. You notice we didn't put any fasteners on it. We also didn't use any sealant on it. Pella does not say that you need that in the recommendations, and I like that. It makes that window a really easy one to pull out 50 years from now without having anything on there. And then it's simply a tape job to finish it off.
Correct.
Easy enough. Jaden, we've got one more step though, because now we need to finish off the air sealing. Talk me through how I'm going to do that on the inside.
Yes, so one of the things that's positive about our sill shims is they do provide the space along the bottom to give you room to get that sealant or the spray foam between the window frame and the opening where we want it. But you can continue around the opening with either your spray foam or your back rod and sealant and seal up the interior.
I'm actually going to recommend we do both. I'm going to use a low expansion sealant. I'm going to pop it in this, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch gap. I'm going to try and keep it towards the middle of the window though, frankly. We don't want to go crazy with that and use it everywhere. I want a little bit of airspace back there that if there were any incidental moisture that made it past that flashing flange, I want to provide a path. I want this to be a water managed, drained system. So I'm going to kind of put that straw halfway in. In fact, I might even mark it with a piece of tape how deep I want that tip to be, just as a visual guide. I'm going to run that bead all the way around, and then I'm going to put some backer rod in there, and I'm going to use something like either Big Stretch, maybe from Sashco, or I'm also a really big fan of Proseco's Air Dam, which is fully intended for that purpose. You're also going to notice where the clips are. I'm going to do a good job of really going over that clip, making sure I've got a good wad of air sealing there. And that's not going to mess with my drywall, but that's really going to make sure that I've got a really good air seal on there. And that's really about it, Jaden.
Absolutely.
Really straightforward install. And again, steady set. It's a one-man install. It's safer, it's faster. I think that's got to be 50% faster. I mean, you think about a big window like this on the second floor that you're taking a guy up a ladder to get to. That's a big deal by just walking through the house and dropping it in place.
Yeah, and oftentimes you might have an individual holding the bottom of the ladder, stabilizing it while somebody is up above with the additional person inside, so possibly 2 or 3 people with one window.
Yeah, I like that. And one other thing you'll notice as you walk around the house, Jaden, I didn't do any mold windows in this house. I like having single windows. So like for instance, in the front of the house, I've got 4 windows in a row. Now I've got one guy that can set all 4 of those windows, no problem. And we can still do steady set with a mold. We can do flanged windows with a mold, but why not make those individual windows so that now one workman, one workwoman can just drop that window in from the inside with Pella steady set. I did that everywhere in the house. I don't have any moles, and I really think that's a nice detail when it comes to thinking about the people on your job site and saving their backs.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming out, Jaden. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, last 5 windows in the house. We're on the 2nd floor, and I think this really shows the power of steady set right here. You'll notice there's no ladders. There's nobody outside. We're doing everything from right here in the family room. All right, you ready, Chewy? Go for it. Numero uno. Boom. Numero dos. Look at that, that's awesome. Número 3. Número 4. Oh, baby, look at that. Yes. How about that? Isn't that awesome? That looked great, didn't it? Steady set. Okay, now, laser set up. The other thing I really like about this though is we didn't mull any of these windows. Look, these are all individual units, which does mean I've got a little less glass, right? I got a little structure in between there, but it means that we could have done this with one guy. I could have by myself set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way along there. Instead, you know, we had 5 guys for fun to show it outside, but this really shows the power of steady set. Now the work begins. Let's get them all level, make sure everything looks good. Shim them. By the way, those head fingers are holding them in place up there, so nothing's going anywhere. We're not worried about a little wind blowing them in. We can do all our fine adjustments and then screw them off. So this is a pretty cool system. All right, Chewy, take it from here. Thanks, brother. Okay, y'all, slightly different window condition here. I wanted to show you an alternative to the method that we use in the rest of the house. So most of the house, we use the zip system tape, their standard straight tape, that stretch tape that's so cool. But I wanted to show you a different condition. You know, I haven't talked about it much on the series, but these 2 walls I'm doing a little bit different than the rest of the house. This wall has the insulated zip, the zip R sheathing. In fact, I think you can see it right over there. It says zip insulated. But this wall is standard zip, and I've got 2 different walls. I've got a 2x4 wall here and a 2x6 wall that we're gonna be doing exterior insulation. So I've got 2.5 inch layers of Atlas insulation going on the outside of this wall. And I wanted to show you 2 different ways to set a window if you're gonna do exterior insulation. This is a method that I really like. What you're seeing here is a 2x4 exterior buck that's bringing the face of the window out from the zip system face, from the shear wall face, by 3 inches, and that matches the thickness of my insulation. Now later when I set this window and go to trim this, I'm gonna have to do something so that my hardy siding butts in nicely to that window. We'll show you that in a future episode. But what you're seeing here is that bucks in place, and then I use 2 different products to waterproof this opening. These are fluid applied products from Posico. The first one that's red is called Fast Flash. You can get it in either a 29-ounce tube, the smaller tube, or you can get it in sausage packs, which is going to be your most economical and also your least trash on the job. And then the other product, you can see a little bit of it here, which is pink, is called Posico Joint and Seam. This is intended to do first on all of your gaps or cracks, joint seams, all that sort of thing. So you'll notice that if you go back and look at the footage, the guys did all the corners, all the joints in this pink product first. And then while that was still wet, we didn't even need to let it dry. Then we came back and we did Fast Flash. This kind of feels like a bit of icing a cake, all right? You gun it out in a big kind of snake shape, and then you take a Bondo type scraper and you scrape it all down. And as long as you're not seeing the wood, you know that you went thick enough on this product. This was originally developed in the 1970s. The chemistry came from the automotive industry. This was basically an adhesive sealant for windshields on cars. That technology has been adapted to the construction industry, and it's been at least 2 or maybe more decades that this has been used in the commercial construction world. It's starting to become more and more standard in the residential world. Now, if you're a zip system fan, you've seen Liquid Flash. That's a similar product to this Fast Flash. It's gray instead of red. There's probably some other differences, but it's a similar product. But this Posico, I really like it because they've got a family of products. And in fact, I could have done the whole house in Posico if I didn't want to necessarily use OSB that zip comes with. I could have done, let's say, a 3/4 plywood and then used all Posico's products on the outside to do a full fluid applied exterior on the house. But when it comes to doing a single buck, it's a great way to go. Now, I also did this other window over here without the jamb extension, just to show you what a kind of standard window would look like with this. And one of the things that really makes sense when you see this is that there's no joints, right? There's no seams, there's no laps, there's no, hey, did I get the order of these correct? Did I go from the bottom up? No, it doesn't matter. I could come back and touch this up if I missed something. I could come back if I damaged it and touched it up. I could come back and do whatever I need to. So this is a really interesting system. Now we're gonna set these 2 windows the same way as we did with the other windows, and then we're gonna detail the outside with more Fast Flash. That's how we'll integrate and waterproof that waterproofing flange on the outside of these Pellas. But I thought I'd give you the basics on this and show you an alternative.
All right, y'all, our last window here, I'm gonna pull this. We taped onto the frame. This isn't necessarily from the specs. This is something I came up with, but if you look at this flashing flange, it actually has a barb that inserts into the aluminum. So just for extra protection, because you know how I like to do things the extra way, we ran a bead of Fast Flash over top of that flashing flange onto the aluminum frame, and we taped it so it wouldn't show. The guys absolutely nailed this. This looks beautiful. This definitely meets my bomber install requirements. I'm not gonna be tall enough to pull this. Well, maybe I will, let's see. See if I can get the whole thing. Can I get it? Oh man, this is nerdy, but you guys are following me, right? Y'all are just as nerdy as I am. Oh, I can't quite get it, dang it. There we go. Oh, that was satisfying. And look, I didn't even get anything on me. Guys, thanks for joining me for this window edition. These Pellas have been terrific. First time installing them, the crew did an amazing job. Pella makes a great product, but I do want to stress, no matter which manufacturer you choose, install is critical, right? We got to do a mock-up. We got to talk it through with the crew. We got to think about best practices. We certainly want to use the manufacturer's best practices, but if there's something like this that you see that could go one step beyond, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great detail, right? The manufacturer is never going to be upset with you by putting an extra head flashing on or doing some extra detail. So think about your windows when you install them.
use your best practices. Be sure you get a crew that you really trust, that has the time, that isn't rushed on doing that window install. This is my framing crew that I've been working with for 15 years. They take the time to do it right. I pay these guys on a weekly rate, so they're basically time and materials when they do my installs, which means they take their time, they do it right, we talk it over, and that makes a giant difference. Big thanks to our friends at Builders FirstSource for sponsoring the Reisinger build. If you haven't seen the previous episodes on this series, go back and watch those. We have some terrific episodes talking about their digital tools, showing how we frame this house about 40% faster using ReadyFrame, and all that's available for you as a builder. Anyways, keep catching up, guys. We've got a lot to go on this project. We're coming up on a sheathing episode. We're coming up on exterior rooftop insulation, outsolation on this wall. We got a lot of really nerdy details on this build. Thanks for following along. We'll see you next time on the Reisinger build.